The ABCs of horror.
Welcome to the HellBound Horror Show. Tonight we get to dive into the topic of self-proclaimed messiahs. Are they truly prophets, messengers of God? Or are they really good at illusions, being able to pull the wool over people's eyes? Probably the latter. But what if one of these self-proclaimed messiahs actually had the power from beyond? What then? Well, good thing we have the good old Necronomicon, because I know the answers in here. It's under L. Clive Barker's Lord of Illusions. Clive Barker. What a notable name in the horror genre, especially if you're into horror literature and horror films from the late 80s to early 90s. Barker is first and foremost a horror writer and was very well revered when he first came onto the scene. Even Stephen King acknowledged Barker by saying, "I have seen the future of horror fiction, and his name is Clive Barker." That is pretty awesome praise from one of the top names in horror. So when he got that type of praise, people wanted to start adapting his work into film. However, Barker was really upset with how they handled his properties in his first few movie adaptations. He just sold the licensing rights and had no say in the final product. So, in 1988, he decided to direct his own adaptation of his short novella, The HellBound Heart, into the horror classic Hellraiser. His first feature film was a huge success, so it was only natural for him to make another film off of his work just 2 years later. Nightbreed was released in 1990, and it was bad. Fans and critics just hated it. Barker was upset with the final product because the studio made him cut out a ton of the movie. The studio plain butchered it. Barker pushed to have a director's cut, but it wasn't granted until 2014, almost 25 years after the film was initially released. And that director's cut sort of revived the film. People began to appreciate it, and now it has a cult following. Barker would return to the director's chair just one last time. It was all or nothing. And Barker was going to use his favorite reoccurring character, his saving grace. If the film did well, no doubt would Barker create a series of films based off of this character. But if the film failed, well then, Barker's dream of being a director would be over.
Come with me into the great beyond.
Well, it failed, and it failed hard. And I'm aware that the film studio cut the film to pieces. But Clive Barker had a director's cut out the same year that the film was released, and it still failed. This film almost single-handedly ruined any attempt of Clive Barker adapting any of his works to film, even if he wasn't the director. It wasn't until 2008 when another one of his works was finally adapted to the big screen in 2008's Midnight Meat Train. So, what happened? Lord of Illusion actually starts off on an extremely high note for me. We get these long, desolate shots of the desert. We see chopped up chickens and decaying bones, just hitting home the fact that nothing is alive here. We see a building, a worn down building, home to a festering cult. A man named Nyx claims to be a messiah. And he may actually be right. He shows his disciples his abilities and teaches them how they can harness the power. It's all vague and lightly hinted at, but I love that. It doesn't force it down your throat, and you, the viewer, can fill in the pieces as you see fit. Also, that set design is fantastic. Right away, we see 2 cars pull up with 4 individuals. They were once disciples of Nyx, but they wanted out of the cult. And they were fine letting bygones be bygones. However, Nyx kidnapped a little girl that they knew, and Nyx is torturing her. The audience has to apply their own meaning as to why he's doing all of this. Nyx has gone too far, and he must die. As we follow them inside, we see how nutty the cultists are and how persuasive they can be. Nyx is a master manipulator and is able to literally dig his fingers back into Swan, who's the lead of the group. They fight back and eventually break the bond that Nyx has over them. It ends with Nyx getting shot. They put on this weird but somehow awesome device over Nyx's dead head to prevent him from coming back. They are going to bury him so deep, no one will ever find him. It's brilliant and ominous. We get a real sense of Nyx's power without showing too much. And he's threatening the same way Charles Manson is threatening. He makes you believe that he is the good guy. And that's terrifying. It's just so unfortunate that the movie never really gets to that height again. 13 years have passed, and now we get to see our lead character, the main man himself, Harry D'Amour. Harry is a private investigator and one of Clive Barker's only reoccurring characters. Harry is great because he has this film noir thing going with him, yet you can put him in any supernatural situation. Harry just came back from a case in which he's getting bashed by the media. He took place in an exorcism, and honestly, I wish the film would have explored this just a little bit more. Maybe show how it's affected Harry, but it really just scratches the surface, and honestly, could have been executed a lot better.
Touch the darkness, D'Amour. It's been waiting for you.
Harry gets a job to go to Los Angeles where he stumbles onto a murder scene. One of the vigilantes from the opening sequence is being murdered by one of Nyx's goons. Harry, of course, tries to figure out more, which leads him to Swan, now a famous illusionist, with his wife. She's super important, but I don't want to spoil the connection, so you'll have to find out on your own. It turns out that all of Nyx's goons are trying to kill all who wronged Nyx in the opening sequence. And then they're going to reunite to resurrect Nyx himself. It's fairly interesting, even though it gets a little muddy from time to time. The film does a great job at making Nyx's possible return both foreboding and unnerving. It's this monumental driving force that really carries the film. One of the darkest things I have ever seen in film takes place when all of Nyx's old followers get a note saying that Nyx's homecoming is going to happen. The music plays this cheerful tune, and out of nowhere, the mailman has a dead body in his closet. And the worst is the stereotypical housewife making breakfast for her family. We see the dad and the daughter leaned over the table, dead. And she just packs up and leaves. stepping over her dead son in the process. No further context. Just sick. She had this normal life, but deep down, she was just waiting for this moment. It's ruthless, relentless, and just rough. The buildup is great, but that ending falls so flat. The CGI is awful, horrendous, and just jarring. Not to mention that all of the cultists ham up their performance. It's over the top and forced. One more thing. Just one more thing. By this point in the movie, I was so sick and tired of the stock punching sound effects. It did not fit this gritty, supernatural horror film noir. It just was out of place, and here we are. It's the end of human life as we know it, and we have these cartoon sound effects. I watched this film as a young teenager, and I remember being super excited for it because I was a huge Clive Barker fan at the time. I remember trying to like it, but it soon faded out of my mind. When I went to rewatch it for this review, I remembered some awesome imagery, but couldn't for the life of me remember how it ended, or even what the story was about. And that sums up the movie perfectly. There's some brilliance here. Some awesome, memorable shots, some fantastic ideas, some thick, ominous dread, but at the end of the day, it's a mess, and it ends terribly. And for that, it's unfortunately forgettable. It's not the worst thing in the world, and I would have loved it if Clive Barker directed more movies. However, it's a business, and he wasn't bringing in the big bucks anymore. And that's all I really have to say about Lord of Illusion. Okay. I'm sorry, but this is awkward. You have something behind your ear. No, here. Let me help you. What do you got? What do you got? What is that? Huh. Check that out. Check out that magic. You had a quarter behind your ear. You didn't even know that. But I don't think that's all. Let me get that. What is that? What is that? What do you have behind your ear this time? Oh, no way. That's a broom. You had a broom behind your ear. What? Don't keep brooms behind your ear. What are you? Oh boy. You're not done. You got something else in your ear. I'll get it this time. Don't worry. What is that? Is that? Oh my God, that's the ending credits.